Good evening. Happy Sunday. We're sitting in a little different space tonight. We had some technical difficulties. I'm sorry if I'm a little late, but we're going forward. We're forging on using my phone instead of the video camera. So I'm hoping that everything is good and you can see and hear me. Tonight we go on to book 2, which is Edward Randall and his wife Maria, and chapter 6. Last night we learned that Edward arrived at Crown Hill safely, that nothing had happened in the succeeding 24 hours after he first arrived there as far as any spiritual or ghostly activity. So things started to calm down with his wife Maria and his daughters. He had Maria somewhat convinced that she didn't need to leave Crown Hill because whatever happened wasn't going to happen again. We also met Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for the first time. Yes, that's right. The author of Sherlock Holmes is part of this story, was part of the real story. So you're going to learn more about that tonight, and a little bit more about how this whole thing works with Mary and the house, and the house's dedication to caring for Mary, who lived in the house in the 1880s and was found hanged in a shed behind the house, and her spirit is inextricably wounded and is trapped in Crown Hill. And the house has promised her that it will try to help her find a way to be able to pass whatever that is. So, let's start. Crown Hill, a novel of love, life, and the afterlife. Book 2, Chapter 6. A cloud of white steam infused the air as the train chugged its way into the station. When the engineer slowed the string of rail cars to a stop, a porter alighted from the first passenger car, and with a riser of portable stairs in hand. In one neat motion, the uniformed railman adeptly positioned the steps on the ground. As if on cue, a tall, distinguished-looking gentleman emerged from the train and briskly navigated the stairs. He was dressed in an elegant three-piece suit, complete with a striped tie and a straw boater hat. His face was highlighted by a well-tended mustache. As the man paused to scan the surrounding rail yard, Arthur had no doubt that this was his passenger. Accordingly, he approached and introduced himself. "Good afternoon, Sir Conan Doyle. I presume—" "My name is Arthur Smith." Pointing toward the nearby Model T, Arthur continued, "I am the chauffeur for the Edward Randall family. Mr. Randall sent me to transport you to Crown Hill, where he awaits your arrival. Welcome to Eden, sir." "Quite right, Eden. A perfect name for the countryside I have enjoyed during my train trip from Buffalo. And you are spot on, Arthur. I am Sir Conan Doyle. My pleasure to make your acquaintance. Now, if you would be so good as to gather my bags, I will make my way to the car, and we can be off." With a flourish, Sir Conan Doyle set off, leaving Arthur in search of the famed author's baggage. Upon locating the 3 fine leather valises, Arthur firmly secured them to the Model T's baggage rack. Moving to the front of the car, he cranked the engine to a fine hum, whereupon he slid across the driver's seat, shifted the car into gear, and began the short journey to Crown Hill. In minutes, Arthur was navigating the Model T around Crown Hill's circular drive. The sound of the crunching gravel beneath the tires, coupled with the loud exhaust from the car's 4-cylinder engine, clearly heralded their arrival throughout the property and the house. Anxious to greet his guest, Edward quickly made his way downstairs from his second-floor office. Passing through the kitchen, he exited to the back porch precisely as Sir Conan Doyle alighted from the car. The 2 men met midpoint along the brick walkway to the house beneath the rose-covered trellis. "Edward, jolly good to finally meet face to face." "Likewise, Sir Arthur. Welcome to Crown Hill." Upon sharing a dignified handshake, Edward guided the Scotsman into the house and through a brief tour of the main floor, ending on the gracious wrap-around porch. "I say, old chap, The view from here is quite spectacular. The eminent writer strolled and inspected the covered veranda end to end. I can see exactly why you and your family are devoted to spending summers here. And by the by, when might I enjoy the privilege of meeting your lovely wife and daughters? Sir Arthur's question caused Edward's mind to reflect on the final moments before Maria and the girls had departed days earlier. He recalled valiantly pleading with his wife to stay, using the same entreaties he had offered throughout their sleepless night. My darling, please reconsider. Please don't allow these few isolated incidents to separate us. Edward knew that the intensity of his steel-gray eyes were having their impact on Maria's soul, as they had from the moment the two first met. He could sense his wife's heart softening, compelling her to follow his lead. However, the appearance of their daughters quickly hardened Maria's mindset. "Mother, we're ready." Virginia and Marion stood before their parents, pale and exhausted. The disturbing incident involving the sideboard mirror had thoroughly frightened the sisters, frightened them to the point that they were having difficulty sleeping in their feather-down brass beds. Moreover, since the haunting experience, the girls had become fearful of venturing at all from their mother's side, day or night. Witnessing his children's distress, Edward was forced to admit Maria was doing what was best, removing them from the terror that now seemingly defined Crown Hill. As the family filed out the back porch door and passed beneath the trellis to the waiting car, the Randalls appeared to be in collective mourning. Virginia and Marion softly kissed their father goodbye. Edward embraced them each in a wholehearted hug. Husband and wife united in a touching embrace that lasted but a minute. Then, with a final wave, the three were off for the train station, leaving Edward with a heavy heart of lingering thoughts and fears. "I say, old man, everything quite all right?" Yes, I'm sorry, Sir Arthur. My mind wandered there for a moment. You asked about meeting Maria and the girls. To be honest, they have taken unexpected leave of Crown Hill. They departed last week for Buffalo, and then we're going on to our family compound on Black Lake in Canada. Departed, you say? I hope it's nothing in the nature of an emergency or an illness. Fortunately, no. Although if you were to ask my wife and daughters, I have no doubt they would say there had been an emergency. You see, recently a most unusual spiritual occurrence took place here at Crown Hill. Spiritual occurrence? How fascinating! Are we talking voices or apparitions? Objects flying through the air? Have you performed temperature tests or conducted seances? The intensity of Sir Arthur's questions tweaked Edward's sense of reason. To this point, he had focused only on the ways that his family had been affected by the woman in the mirror. Listening to his guest's queries, Edward felt a bit foolish that he had not considered the matter from a more scientific perspective. Actually, no. That was one of my reasons for inviting you here. I wanted to share the details of the occurrence and draw upon your expertise, discuss your thoughts. The respected spiritualist was intrigued. Well then, do tell, my friend, and we shall see what we can see. The two settled into adjoining, oversized wicker chairs, and Edward began. Last week I was in my office, reviewing correspondence, when suddenly I heard my wife and daughters shrieking my name. Rushing downstairs, I found them all in the dining room, frozen in fear by an apparition of a woman's ghostly face in the sideboard mirror. The image was haunting and remained visible for several seconds. Equally unsettling, it seemed to be speaking directly to me, but not in sounds that could be heard. Then, just as oddly as it materialized, the image disappeared. I say, old chap, it all sounds most intriguing. The celebrated mystery writer extracted a leather pouch from his waistcoat pocket. Out of the pouch he pulled a pipe, which he tapped sharply several times along the edge of his handmade leather boot. "Tell me, my good man, have you undertaken any follow-up to attempt to apprise who it was that appeared? And has the apparition returned since?" Again, Edward felt quite sheepish as he replied, "Truthfully, Maria decided that with everything happening, she and the girls were no longer safe here. In fact, initially, she demanded that we sell Crown Hill and never return. So I did nothing while they were present. As for further appearances, no, nothing more of a spiritual nature has happened since that night. My hope, however, is that between us we will be able to discover who it was that appeared in the mirror and why this woman suddenly began haunting. Perhaps then I can put an end to this odd spiritual activity which will encourage Maria and the girls to return." Pausing to better collect his thoughts, Edward continued, "So, Sir Arthur, now that you are here and have heard my story, would you have a willingness to help?" The distinguished author filled his pipe with fragrant tobacco from the leather pouch. Holding match to bowl, he inhaled deeply, and with the sweetness of his custom-blended tobacco infusing the humorous summer air, he replied, "Most certainly, I would be delighted to aid you, Edward. I'm pleased that you've invited me to Crown Hill to witness whatever we may discover. I will say that my first and instinctive response is that your woman in the mirror is a spirit, who, due to unknown circumstance, has not yet passed." "Agreed," Edward responded. "I believe that to be the case as well. As you know, Emily French and I discovered a number of spirits still here on earth long after their physical beings had passed. Many of them were in search of a way to cross over, and so I am familiar with this type of encounter. What I cannot understand is why this woman has appeared now. We've summered at Crown Hill in peaceful tranquility for years. Suddenly, with no apparent reason, this woman materializes. It's so odd." The men continued in conversation for several hours, until the setting sun reminded Edward of his hosting duties. "Sir Arthur, I apologize. I have completely forgotten my manners. You must be hungry and most likely tired from your trip. The housekeeper left us a cold plate dinner, and if you would like, we can dine right here on the porch." "Sounds absolutely capital," the Englishman responded, "and a healthy tumbler of Scotch would make it all the better, old chap." Edward and Sir Arthur enjoyed a dinner, highlighted by conversations on a wide number of topics. They reviewed the controversial reaction to Doyle's book, The Coming of Fairies. They discussed their mutual acquaintance, Harry Houdini. They delved deeply into the current storm over the infamous Blue Book, a publication providing tricks of the trades employed by fraudulent mediums. After several lost hours, Sir Arthur pointedly brought the conversation back to their ultimate purpose. "Edward, let us pour ourselves another finger of Scotch and go into the dining room. I would like to inspect this sideboard of yours and its mysterious mirror." The prospect of beginning both enticed and unsettled Edward. His natural curiosity and deep belief in spirits encouraged him to jump to the task with passionate enthusiasm. Yet the recall of his strong physical reaction to the woman in the mirror was not one easily dismissed. He disliked identifying it as such, but Edward believed he was actually fearful of what might lie ahead. Sir Arthur, on the other hand, appeared exhilarated by all aspects of the happening. In fact, he had already poured himself another drink and was making his way from the porch onto the dining room. Edward could do little else but follow. Once into the room, Edward lit the gas sconces lining the walls. At the same time, Sir Arthur headed directly to the sideboard like metal to a magnet. The spiritualist stood before the solid oak furniture in reverential silence. He ran his hands over and around the smooth wood-grain top, reaching out and carefully exploring the attached set-back mirror. Edward was intimidated by what he observed. It appeared as if his guest was executing some sort of solemn ritual. Uneasily, he stepped back and allowed space for whatever rite was underway. Finally, Sir Arthur spoke. "I say, old man, this is a fine piece of furniture, solid and well made. I cannot imagine it being anything more, but I do not doubt that your story is true. At this point, what I would like to do is head off to a good night's rest. Then in the morrow, refreshed and energized, we can begin again the task of trying to solve your mystery." To Edward's relief, Sir Arthur's presence before the sideboard had not incited spiritual activity. Drawing closer to both the man and the mirror, the calmed host responded, Certainly, Sir Arthur. That would be fine. And I apologize if I have rudely kept you up too late discussing my personal concerns. Not at all, my dear man. I've thoroughly enjoyed our evening together. And please, call me Doyle. It's the moniker used by all who know me best. All right then, Doyle. Let me close up the house, and I will show you to your room. Edward collected the dinner dishes from the porch and deposited them in the kitchen sink. Before taking her leave, Maria had arranged for the chauffeur's sister, Agnes, to begin working at Crown Hill as a housekeeper and cook. Edward reasoned that she could take care of the dishes upon her arrival in the morning. Returning to the dining room, Edward lit the candled lamp on the sideboard and extinguished the wall sconces one by one. Together, the two men climbed the treads of the formal front stairway and passed along the hallway to the guest suite, set privately in the back of the house. Edward toured Sir Arthur through a sitting room with a small divan and an ornately carved oak and leather rocking chair. He then progressed to the bedroom, highlighted by an oversized cast-iron bed and a connected dressing room, complete with plush towels and quilted hangers. Edward was always pleased by the special touches his wife Maria put in place for family and friends who joined them at Crown Hill. Lighting Sir Arthur's guest room lamp, Edward pointed out the nearby lavatory and the back stairs which led to the kitchen. With the layout of the house defined, the two bid each other good night and good dreams. Settling into a sound sleep, the men slumbered peacefully. As they dreamed, both were completely unaware of a light glowing in the dining room, radiating intensely from the sideboard mirror. Both were unconsciously insulated from the sounds of sorrowful weeping permeating throughout the house. Now this will be, for anybody who's not been with me before, this is now at the end of every chapter. The house comes in and is the narrator of the book for you. As Maria and the girls prepared to take their leave, I desperately wanted to change their plans, to soothe them in ways that would entice them to remain within me. Yet, truth be told, I was as distraught as all of them by Mary's appearance in the mirror. That distress, in turn, diminished my abilities to provide their much-needed comforts. For the first time since Mary's passing, I was exhausted by the emotional turmoil that her spirit had created in my being. As a result, the welcoming sense and peaceful auras in which I always surrounded those in my care were now absent, completely drained from me. Worse, I was wholly unaware of Mary's spirit and whatever next frightening actions she might undertake. I had not felt Mary within me since her haunting appearance in the mirror. After so many years together, it was oddly disturbing to be without her spirit. Initially, I was concerned, wondering where she had gone. Yet, at the same time, I was relieved to be free of Mary's pain, her tortured yearnings. For the first time in longer than I could recall, I felt at peace. So it was that Mary's return that night felt like a slowly churning storm, her sorrowful words filtering through her heartbreaking sobs. I have returned, my beloved Crown Hill, returned with a contrite heart and a wish for your forgiveness. I know that I went against our agreement in appearing to the Randall family. All I can tell you is that I was helpless to prevent my deep emotions from overtaking me. Truly, the intensity of my feelings compelled me to do something, anything, that might deliver me from this painful death on earth. Unsure of my heart, I remained silent. Within the space of my quietude, Mary continued her act of contrition. That is why I went away from you. I had to gather my strength and compose my soul. Dear friend, if you can find it in your heart to forgive my actions, I will follow whatever lead you set for me. Even should you ask me to take leave of your shelter, I will do it. Mary's repentant aura warmed the chill that her haunting had draped upon me. I could feel my wooden beams and boards gently expanding and relaxing. Once again, my being opened in welcome to my friend. Sweet Mary, we have been of one heart for too long to allow anything but tenderness between us. I do feel a joy in your return and assure you that I will never deny you my shelter. At the same time, I believe I have the news that we have long awaited. Circumstances may be transpiring that could generate the strength and power to free your soul. As I wove together the stories of the girls and Maria's departure and Sir Conan Doyle's arrival, Mary slipped from within the mirror and once again settled into me, as it had been and was always meant to be. So we start to see more, we start to feel more of the relationship between Mary and the house gives you more insight into how it feels to be settled by live people, human beings, and also by spirits. And if you've ever lived in an old house, you may have had some experience with this kind of a interaction with a house and spirits in it. So I hope that the reading tonight was entertaining for you and engaging. And tomorrow we will come back and read chapter 8, and you'll learn more. You'll have more interaction with Arthur Conan Doyle and Edward Randall, which again really happened. Edward Randall was at Crown Hill, and he and Edward Randall lived at Crown Hill, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did come there and spend time with Edward. And I think you'll start to hear more about young Rose also, who started this whole maelstrom a week earlier when she saw Mary and reacted to her, and it was so compelling that it scared Maria and the girls, and eventually they left. So I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday evening, and I look forward to being together again tomorrow night at 7:30 for chapter 8, and possibly back on the big camera. Who knows? It's an adventure every night here. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy the Crown Hill.